So, hey everybody, welcome to Hip Hop Hackathon. We're going to talk about how to get a job in tech and start and grow a business in tech. And we have Mike, Tammy, and Kimberly here today. And I'll start with just having them introduce themselves.
Mike Roberts. I'm the founder of Creating Coding Careers. We have our nonprofit that does a registered apprenticeship program for folks in tech. My background is that I am a software engineer by trade. So I've been writing software since I was a kid. So more than 30 years, I guess would be a good way to describe it. And just super excited to answer folks' questions about breaking into tech.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tammy McMiller, and I am the founder and CEO of Plan Hill, which is a health data analytics company. What we do is we track your data to keep you safe from disease and also to alert you if you have a disease. My wish for all of you is to have great health, which is the reason I founded the company. And I'm looking forward to informing you more about what I do and my inspiration later in the interview.
My name is Kimberley Bueno-Schonig, and I am the CEO and founder of BuenoSchonig Consulting. We help individuals and companies, anything related from career professional development or entrepreneurship. So super excited to be here and answer questions on either breaking into tech or starting a business.
Awesome. So, we have the best of all worlds here today. So, first question is like I ask everyone, how did you get here? I don't know who wants to take that first. Like, how did you were born to some parents and somewhere, and what happened? How did you get into tech? How did you start being interested? Who told you about it? Let's start there.
I'll start. I've always been a very curious kid. Lots of questions, always wondering how things worked, why they worked a certain way. And it's really no surprise to me that my career ended in me analyzing data, identifying how to best use data for different things to create more products, keep customers, attract customers. I just got started by being excited about how things worked and the story behind numbers. That was really my inspiration. And then in my corporate career, originally before I started my company, my corporate career, I was kind of thrown into projects that people really didn't want. No one really wanted to be bothered with like data, identifying what to do with it. It just seemed kind of like this kind of offshoot type project and practice. So I jumped in that way. And then over time, it just grew and demand for my talent just grew. And then my career just took off.
That's awesome. Kim, you want to go?
Sure. I have started my coaching career. I think it started in college because I was a career peer advisor, and so I was already coaching people on resume writing, cover letter writing. But I think where my entrepreneurial started was when I first left my my fintech job, and I decided to obviously try to pay my bills. So I started a consulting agency, specifically helping people identify areas where they can develop their career, given that I had like an HR background at fintech companies. And what I really started focusing on and what I noticed was there was a gap of people who really understood what HR was or how they can support you in your career development and what steps they could take. So I initially started partnering with a lot of libraries, nonprofit organizations, and kind of helping underrepresented minorities or people who just didn't know what steps to take to kind of either move into the industry or just like career professional development questions in general. And then it kind of just spiraled there. Once I started working with nonprofit organizations, a lot of tech companies started reaching out, and that's kind of like where it spiraled today.
That's awesome. And Mike?
I had a very non-traditional background. So both my parents were school teachers. So it was shameful that I was a terrible student. I was on the 10-year plan in college. And I eventually, just the one narrative that was kind of the same in my life since I was a kid was really liking to kind of like problem solve and really into tech. And so we were fortunate enough to have a home computer when home computers were a very rare thing, right? When they were called home computers, right? To distinguish them from like the big machines in offices. And so I eventually just sort of figured out through sort of like a side hustle before there was even that term was coined, right? Before side hustle was a thing, making little training modules. And that kind of got me really thinking that this could be something I could do as a career. And that entrepreneurial spirit that I had sort of eventually led me to success in the field, and then begin to create opportunities for me to give back to other people and provide the same kind of opportunity for them to discover if tech is part of their one of their superpowers, and then enable them to have a hopefully a shorter journey. I hope everybody that I help can like shorten it and doesn't have to take like 15 years for them to figure out like I can get paid. Wait, I can get paid to do something I love to do. It's amazing.
Yeah, or I can get paid a lot. That was the epiphany for me. It was like a lot. So
That's
that
funny
was
you
the fun
mentioned
part.
that. Funny you mentioned that, Maria. I thought the same. It's like you can have a very nice life by just identifying new ways to use data. It's like this is something you enjoy doing. It's specifically if it's something you really like. It's amazing how far you can advance as far as earnings.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And I also had a home computer, so I was one of those kids too. One of the things I always ask too is like, did you have a certain kind of household or parents that encouraged you to not be afraid of technology or not be afraid in general? Like, what was your growing up environment like, and what can you say to people who don't necessarily don't have that environment, and what can they do now to kind of unwind their mind around the whole tech thing? Whoever wants to go.
I'll jump in. I've always been an independent kid, so I was always kind of more explorative and had an idea of what I wanted to do within realms of what my parents allowed me to do. But they allowed me to be an independent thinker, and I think that that helped me to kind of explore this whole idea around how things work, numbers, those types of things. Even before anyone in my household knew anything about a term called data analytics or data science. Like that wasn't something in my household that people knew about. I come from a different background, not tech related. But I think that children who are not in households that have individuals who are in the STEM fields, there is a thing called YouTube. There's a thing called the internet where you can go and find out all you need to know. That information's out there. So I think that anyone who's growing up in this day and time, there's nothing out there that you can't have access to, that you can just like type a term into a browser and get all the information you need. So I think that it's important for us, youth to identify their own independence and then empower themselves to leverage the technology that they have in their hands, which is their mobile device, to get exposure to different things and learn. There are tons of people out there that's producing all types of content to help you understand what data science is and how to break into data, the data science field, or to become a data analyst, or be in the world of data analytics. That information is out there, not so much when I was a little kid, but I think that it's important for parents to support your children. If you don't have supportive parents, then you can do it on your own.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
I grew up with Asian parents who wanted me to become a doctor. And I went from going on that pathway to then wanting to become a lawyer to now working in tech. And I did not have parents who knew about technology And I think we're lucky in the sense of the type of society we have now is that we do have a lot of technology, like Tammy said, where you have access to YouTube, you have access to the internet. I think the part to acknowledge is that maybe that might not necessarily be accessible to everyone, but I do know public libraries are making an extra effort to have those technologies available. So like, I think asking the right questions or just being curious to know like what's out there, what type of careers there are in tech is really helpful. I wish I had made the decision to go into engineering actually back in college. I wish I took coding. I wish I did computer science. I did not realize it was a career I could take. And even though right now I obviously could learn Python and learn how to code, but I wish I had asked more questions. And I think if you're someone who is interested in tech, just even asking like, what kind of job do you have in tech? Or like, what careers are there in tech that I can kind of explore? So that way you have an idea of what to research, what to look into. And I think like just keeping the curiosity is really important.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I think from my perspective, my parents, like a lot of folks of my parents' generation, felt that for especially for a Black man here in America, the safest path is to get a 4-year degree in something like accounting and get a good job, right? And if I had been a better student, they might have been on the doctor lawyer pathway, but they kind of knew that was not in the cards. So they were just like, you need to get a solid job. And it was a little early. And so they didn't have the same sort of like inundation with technology that we have today. And so when I said, hey, I think I want to go to school for software engineering at the time, they sort of said, no one goes to college for that. You should probably go to like, accounting or something. Right. So I was not encouraged. And I think in some ways, when you're a kid, that sometimes gives you the extra fire in your belly to like get after it and say, well, I'm going to be a little bit of a rebel and like I'm going to, kind of do this on the side until it really kind of materialized for me and became like a real reality when I started seeing success after, just trying for a really long time to kind of figure out how do I continue to nurture the thing that I enjoyed doing until it became obvious that there was career paths. So like Kimberly is saying, if you can find mentors and allies that can help you just understand better the landscape of opportunities that are out there, then it can give you more to sort of like feed that inner hunger to, satisfy your curiosity and try things and test things and figure out, what's more of your interest. Is it on the data side? And if it's on the data side, there's a whole variety of different ways that you can interact with data, whether it's data analytics or data engineering. There's just a whole lot in just that space, let alone the opportunities that can kind of grow as you find more and more what is that what is that part of the T level experience, that T-shaped experience, what's the part that you're really interested in? And then just it's very low cost, right? The internet is practically free. You have access to the internet. And so that's very different than when I was growing up, where you had to buy a book, right? Because the library didn't have any recent books about software engineering. So you had to put a budget behind learning how to code back in the day. Now it's like drinking from a fire hose, right? All this information is available, and you've got to do much more of a job of curating the information and finding out, which oftentimes takes somebody else sort of guiding you down these pathways of like, no, focus on this. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of things going on. So that would be my advice, is like, if you can find supportive people, but that's not always going to be like my parents' generation. It's much more likely that it's your generation, people that are your peers that are also interested, could be great places to sort of like, continue to inspire you to keep trying.
Yeah, I wanted to just add one thing to what Mike was saying too, is that if you are wondering, where should I start in STEM? I don't know what to do. There's so much going on. Where do I begin? Like, begin with what you get the most excited about when you use technology. So is it video gaming? Do you like to game? If it is, do you like the graphics? Do you like when you punch keys that it does cool stuff? Like, just think about like what it is about technology that you use that gets you the most excited. Then think about now delving into that to learn more about like, how can I become that person that does that for other people? I think that's a way to start. That way you won't be like overwhelmed with trying to figure out, more kind of terms that you're not aware of. It's as simple as, what do I enjoy and what do I want to learn about that?
And if I could just make one more point on Tammy's point, which is I often hear people say, I hear that I want to become a software engineer. I hear I should learn Python. So should I start with Python? And I'm just like, who told you that? Right. Mm-hmm. And I often will ask, like, well, what do you want to do? When I was writing my first programs on that early home computer, because if you didn't write the program, there wasn't a program, right? With early computers, like, you had to write the software. So the thing that I was excited about was I could kind of like automate, right? My parents would have like these grade books, and I wrote a little program where they could put all the kids' grades in and then push a button and it would print out a little report card that they could then use to show, the students or the parents, right? So for me, it was like the utility of being able to write something that, it would be able to serve a real useful purpose in the world. And so it's not necessarily about that, hey, I heard this buzzword, or I heard something about this particular domain or topic. It's more about what you said, Tammy. It's like, do you like to see things happen in the real world, and the Internet of Things is like your jam? Or is it automating things and working with Alexia? Or is it like all of these different facets that you can then find a way to like just stay entertained and stay curious and start learning, and then that can lead to lots of opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so interesting because so many people ask, like in my particular journey, people ask, well, how did you get started in technology? And I'm like, well, I started making music videos, and we were, we worked on EA Sports games, and we broadcast the Olympics, and we worked with the Mars mission, and people are like, what? And it's like all of those were tech jobs, every single thing, working with the movie to working on a music video to working with the Hawaiian tropics models and having a party with them. That was all tech. It sounds like a lot of partying and fun, but it was all technology, and people are always shocked about how many different ways. And I'm like, if you think about your whole life, tech touches everything. Right? Mm-hmm. Every profession. There's not one profession where tech is not involved. So tech is everything, right? And when I teach to little kindergartners or, first graders or girls who code and Black girls code, I always say, look, if you look around you, tech is everything. There's not a point where tech doesn't touch. It's like, Michael, you're saying when somebody said, oh yeah, you need to learn Python. And people tell me that all the time. I go, who told you? I say the exact same thing. Who told you that? Because I don't really, I know Python, I know PHP, but I never use it. Ever. For any reason. And I'm a full CIO. And I'm like, we have tools. We have code kits. We have lots of things that don't have to do with programming, coding. I am the laziest coder in the world. So, and then there's lots of things like Web 3.0 and NFTs and all this other stuff. So what do you guys say to like, there's like no code, low code movement? Coding seems like it's like, for a lot of people, going away. Like coding is going to be more like just use some tools and put some stuff together. What do you guys say about all of that world?
I don't think.
And what do you do about a career in that world when 13-year-olds are making $1 million off of NFT? What is a career then?
Yeah, I like the whole low code idea, because I think people should be using their imagination more on like, what can technology do for people, and then think about if there is code that's needed for that, and not just focusing on, okay, I need to learn all this different types of code. It's more, from my opinion, is that you should think about, how can I use my talents to help make the world a better place? If there is not a low code option out there, then you may have to code. But if there's a low code option out there that you can leverage to introduce to help you with your mission, I think you should use it because at the end of the day, no one's asking, oh my God, who coded that behind the scenes? They just want to know, does the technology work for them? So I think low code to no code is probably the best way to go because people can be more imaginative and not have to just worry about learning different languages.
So as someone that trains a lot of software engineers, the one, I guess, thing that I'll dispel that I think people just intuitively think that when they hear about AI and they think about tools, they think that software engineering is going to like go away or be supplanted by, robots and machines. And the reality is the ecosystem is so diverse and there's such a variety and array of different specialized tools that there's always going to be a place for people that are making the tools, right? And making the AI. And so it really boils down to when you think about low code and no code solutions and platforms, is it the right tool for the job, right? And in many cases, as a software engineer, I want to build solutions. And so the solution may involve writing some code, or it may involve leveraging something that we can just buy versus like building it ourselves, or some combination of those things. So I think from the outside, when people think about, is it, a waste of my time to learn this, or are these tools valuable? I would say they run the gamut. Some are going to be super valuable and others are going to be limited in how you can apply that particular tool to certain set problems. And so on the NFT front, there's always a pet rock, right? There's always something that's like the exciting fad and it gets people like interested, right? And so I'm sure if you were an entrepreneur in I don't know if that was the 1970s, and you could swing selling someone a rock, like you're there, right?
It's easy, and I think.
But these days, that's kind of how I think of some of the applications of like blockchain and crypto. I think a lot of it is faddish and there's opportunities, but I think the underlying technology is really interesting and has some amazing use cases that will drive efficiency and all sorts of really great ways of using it in like supply chain and to solve really hard problems. But my thoughts about like investing in a monkey is kind of like investing in like a baseball card. Sure, it's gonna have some value to some people. So like if that's your jam, get after it, right? Figure it out. There's lots of interesting ways that you could leverage that, be creative and use some of that creativity to generate, a business. But it is kind of like pet rock.
I agree with what Mike is saying. I think blockchain, we just scratched the surface of what we can do with that. And I think that it can really help make a big difference in a lot of different sectors, specifically health. I really see that being huge in health around fraud, protection of data, those types of things. So that's another thing for the audience and children that'll be listening to this is that, the whole thing around blockchain is just a way for you to identify the best way to either, share data or in some cases secure your data. So that's another way for you to, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, blockchain is something you should definitely look into. It's a very exciting, piece of technology that I think will be with us for many years to come.
And Kimberly, how do you counsel people on jobs that haven't been invented yet? So I read this article. About 15 incredible jobs that have not been invented yet. And one was like an AI ethicist. The second one is a drone traffic controller. The third is an avatar relationship manager.
Wow.
The fourth one is a human machine integration specialist. And the fifth one is a personal data broker.
Ooh. Wow, they're getting really fancy with the position names. That's great.
Yeah. Oh, and then a 3D printing architect is one. A trash architect.
A trash architect.
Yeah, because there will be more than 7 billion tons of garbage on the earth soon.
Wow.
And an augmented reality journey builder.
Augmented reality journey builder. Yeah.
And like telesurgeon is one also.
Telesurgeon.
So
Yeah,
that,
I mean,
so how do you I mean, because it's one of those weird zones where it's like the car is being reinvented again. I actually just got a picture from my cousin of my great grandfather in a car, one of the earliest cars ever.
oh, I think
Or
I saw your
or
post.
a buggy, if not, I don't know which one. Like, so how do you begin to explain to people about all of this stuff?
Yeah, I like to break it down into a very simple question. What is the problem you're solving? Almost kind of like an entrepreneur, right? Like you're solving a problem, you're trying to close the gap on a specific issue. So the way I like to kind of coach individuals that are looking to pitch ultimately this new position is to what some tech companies break it down into like a PPS, right? There's a problem and then there's a proposed solution. So this role is ultimately going to be implementing and executing on your solution or on the solution that you're proposing. I think the names are kind of just like almost like the last thing that you think about, right? I think it's really mainly focused on like what is the specific problem that you're facing or the company is facing, and why is it impactful to the company? Does it affect revenue? Does it affect the profits? Is there like a significant impact where if you were to fill this position, it would help the companies in a significant way? That's kind of usually how I like to coach individuals. And it always starts off with like, what is the problem? How are you going to solve that problem? And what is the impact to the company? I think if you solve or approach those three questions and you feel pretty solid about it and pitch it to the company, most often they're going to be very excited, right? Because you are clearly passionate about the mission. You're clearly passionate about making an impact. And then I think the name really kind of just relates to obviously what you're doing. So in terms of the trash architect, I would assume it has something to do with sustainability, finding ways to like make sure that you're finding more efficient ways to reduce trash in the environment. So I think the name is often the last thing to think about, but really focusing on like what the role and responsibilities is for this role. And I know a lot of tech companies actually implement like a PPS and often pitch for like a new position. So this is actually kind of common. So I highly recommend that, if you are someone who is either currently employed at a tech company, or maybe you're even interested and invested in this one company and are actively reading up on what they're doing, you could potentially even pitch the CEO or the hiring manager saying like, hey, this is a problem with your product. This is how I can solve it. And use that as an opportunity to open a door for you at a potential career for you at that company even too. And I've seen that successfully happen with a lot of my clients. So I do know that like a lot of tech companies are very open to that, and it's part of their culture almost too. I would probably just say it just depends on the company that you're pitching to, right? Some companies are open to that. Some companies have a specific process. It just depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And so this culture of pitching, let's break that down just a little bit, because I don't think people know this is possible, right? So one of the things, I was just on a podcast, I think like 2 days ago, and people say, well, how do you get a mentor? Or how do you start becoming a leader? I'm like, you just approach the person and you ask them professionally. And he was like, oh, that's it. I'm like, there's no like secret pitch ninja skill thing you need to do. I just literally say, hey, how are you doing? Here's what I want. Here's what I would like you to do. Do you want to do it, or do you want to do it? I mean, that's kind of just it, right? So the worst they can say is no, right? So how does someone practice getting up the confidence to like network and get to know people and start this like pitching process and like learning about the jobs and what internships you have, and how do you start to gain those social skills? I know I was like terrified when I was younger. I was the worst pitch person, which is a story for another time. I was horrible. And I know it doesn't seem like it now, but I was terrible with the capital gigantic Hollywood sign size T. So, how do you get somebody over that hump to where they stop
Yeah.
being like, seem like they have marbles in their mouth to like being able to pitch?
Yeah, I mean, I have the same approach. Usually I always encourage like just do it. I think if you're someone who is struggling with the just do it part, something that I actually implement with a lot of workshops is role play. And I feel like when you practice with a family member or friend and just have them be that person and just practice asking them like, hey, can you help me with this one thing? Or hey, can you guide me in this one way? That's like one hump, right? Even though there's like familiarity with your friend or family member, that's still a difficult ask, right? Like the question itself often is a little bit harder to do. But then when you go, to maybe your cousin, maybe that you're not so familiar with, or like a friend of a friend, you can then continue to practice. And I find like when you practice more, once you do it once, it becomes so much easier once you do it again and again and again. Obviously, another alternative is attending these networking events and then having a friend come with you. So that way you can like both feel that shared experience of like, okay, we're in this together. We don't know anyone. So let's kind of like buddy up on this and both talk to one person. So it's not just like a burden on yourself. So that's kind of like usually how I like to give tips on how to overcome that hump.
Have a wingman. What say you, Mike?
Yeah.
How do
A networking
you,
wingman.
Yeah, working wingman. Mike, how do you coach people? I know you place some people in some careers and things. How do you get them to get over that hump?
I think again, a lot of practice. It's definitely something built into us as human beings. There is really some stuff going on in your brain where the fight or flight kicks in, and there's a lot of anxiety for a lot of people in an environment where there's this fear of the unknown. If I walk into a room, are they going to laugh at me? Am I going to spill something on myself? Right. And so that nervousness only goes away, in my opinion, through lots of exposure to the environment and just sort of like doing the process. To this day, I do a lot of public speaking. There was a time in my life where I was a DJ, and I was the most introverted DJ that you could ever imagine. I was just like, don't come up and talk to me. Let me just play these records on my own and enjoy, right? But that said, I would say that I still struggle with networking, going to conferences and walking into a room and feeling like, oh man, another situation where, and then I go back to my playbook. Okay, I know what to do. I look for the bar so I can get something in my hand, so I have something to kind of comfort and like keep my throat good and I don't feel nervous to speak. And food table is always a good one, right? Because people are you're positioning yourself where you are going to encounter people. And then I have some practice and rehearse things. I'll tell people it's so easy when you go to a meetup, like a JavaScript meetup. All you got to do is walk up to the person and say, "Hi, my name's Mike. What do you do?" And then let them talk. And then, they'll just start talking about themselves and the work that they do and where they're at. And you just listen and nod. And now you've done it. You've started, right? And now you've broken down that fear you have that the person is going to be mean or rude or you're not going to know what to say. And so I think being intentional when you decide I'm going to go out and I'm going to go to events. And to this day, I mean, COVID's made it a little bit shorter in terms of the amount of events that I've gone to over the last couple of years. But I go into most rooms feeling super uncomfortable. And then after about being in the room for about 30 minutes or so, I'll meet someone and I'll have a conversation with a person. And then I'll think to myself in real time, I'm so glad I came into this room and talked to this person because now I've made this connection and I've built this wonderful relationship, or at least started it. And so it never fails that when I make the extra step of saying, okay, I'm going to go into one more of these rooms and do one more round of networking, that I often feel a lot better afterwards than I felt like I had to kind of pump myself up to get ready to go into the room. And it gets easier, but it never gets, in my opinion, at least for me, it never gets super easy. So even though it might seem like I'm calm and cool and collected in that environment, I have a lot of social anxiety and feel a lot of tension, walking into a room, and I have to use a lot of techniques to sort of manage that and keep it under control. So a lot of it is just preparing yourself for that and knowing that, if it's going to stress you out, it's okay. Have some of your go-tos where you're going to talk about, hey, what is it that you do? Be prepared to explain what you do, your short little elevator pitch, and you'll get through it. And then, you'll do another one, Do another one and get a little bit easier each time.
Yeah, it's true. I think it's common also.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
where
so.
you say, Tammy? Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I think so too, Dan. I seen his comment pop up. People that are usually in tech are a little bit more introvert generally. But for myself, I always think that everyone else in the room is probably nervous too, and that the person that you're approaching is probably nervous and wants to, present themselves in the best way to you as well. So if you keep thinking that everyone is probably feeling the same as you, it kind of helps actually. So I always think that way. And then also for the kids that are, children that are listening, you'll probably feel that even more so because you're younger than maybe a mentor that you're wanting to reach out to. Just always think that they may be an adult now, but they were a teen at one point. At one point in time, they didn't know what they wanted to do either, and they needed help. So what you're experiencing isn't unique. So don't feel that, you are going to be approaching this person that you see now that's an executive and very successful. They were a teenager too. They didn't know what they wanted to do as well. And at the end of the day, believe it or not, mentors are sometimes nervous about how they work with mentees. We want to make sure we do our best too to help you. So everyone is coming with the best intention. Just always remember that the person in the room is probably feeling the same as you. So if you go in there with that level of confidence and just connect on that level, that should help you at least to start the conversation. And then just lastly, back to what I said earlier, let them know what you love about tech. You can go and talk to a person that you want to be your mentor and say, hey, I really love YouTube, and I think capturing video is awesome. And I just want to learn more about that technology and how that platform works. Is there an industry I can get into? Is there someone you can introduce me to? Can you help me? I mean, just that alone, it kind of equalizes everything. And that person may say, hey, I like YouTube too. And yeah, actually, I can help you. So just keep it very normal. Don't make it more than it needs to be. Keep it on a human level, a very basic level. And then you'll find that people have a tendency to open up more.
Absolutely. And even more, and ask a lot of people, right? Because some people may be busy and some people may not be available and some people may be in the middle of something, but just ask all the time, right? We're always be pitching.
Yes.
And get ready, and you're really going to advance far that way. So I just want to shift before we wrap it up soon about billion-dollar ideas, right? $1,000,000 ideas. When we talk about entrepreneurialism, I think we're all entrepreneurs on this panel. What do you say about the journey from the things that people never hear about in the entrepreneurial journey and what they think about it, like what the myths? And you want to start a business, everybody wants to start a business, side hustle, consulting, VC, whatever. How do they make sense of all that? What is the reality?
I can start. And I'll be very frank and say it's like a roller coaster that will make you nauseous because of so many highs and so many lows. And I think what I've learned from an entrepreneur is that you definitely want to promote your accomplishments. But I think when you promote your accomplishments, people often don't realize the failures or the hardships that you went through before you may have received that accomplishment. And at least for me personally, I'm constantly hustling. I think that there's a lot of highs. There's also a lot of lows. But for me, I enjoy that. I enjoy overcoming a struggle, overcoming an obstacle, being able to push through a wall and say, like, I went from point A to now point B. But it's definitely something that at least for me, I feel like I have to keep up with. Like, I want to make sure that I know I have a pulse in the industry. I know what's going on around me. I know like what is relevant and what's not relevant. So it kind of keeps you on your toes. And if that's something that you like, definitely say go for it. I always recommend just trying entrepreneurship, just seeing if you like it, because I never thought that I would be an entrepreneur. It was never even a thought. I had no idea what entrepreneurship meant or that it even existed. So I always recommend trying it and seeing if you like it, and like pursuing it if you do. But if you don't, at least you know that that's not something that's not your cup of tea. So that's at least been my experience so far.
So I guess I'll go next. This is something I could. How much time we got? This is a a lot to unpack, but I'll just say on the surface, I don't believe. I don't know if I say if I don't believe in like million and billion dollar ideas. I don't put a lot of emphasis on the ideas, because I can think of like lots and lots of ideas. Some of them can be turned into successful businesses. Others, there's no business model behind it, although it could be an interesting thing to do. And so I think folks that are successful are the ones that can follow a process. There are lots of different processes that you can follow in entrepreneurship, but there are models and there are ways of doing things, right? Finding product market fit and going through cycles of understanding your customer and making sure that it's either it's a competitive space and it's a horse race, or this is blue ocean. Like there are some real rules and structure to creating and launching a product in a startup. So I'd say the first thing that you should do is not worry so much about, is this $1 million idea, but focus more on, is this something that there's a need for? Am I solving a real problem? And in doing so, am I going to be able to build a team? Right? In many cases, funders want to see not only that you have a novel idea, and then it could be something that's like patentable, but they also want to know you can actually grow the organization and you have some traction. And again, there's going to be these little milestones along the way that are strong signals to the marketplace that you are serious and that you've done your due diligence, and that this is the opportunity that they can invest in. It becomes investable at the point where you can convince other people of this idea. And it's not just saying that my idea is so great and it's going to like be earth shattering and it's going to be $1 billion idea, but it's showing and demonstrating how you can actually get from where you are, what's your pathway to get to the other end. And now from an entrepreneur standpoint, the journey itself, once you've got all those pieces, is like a roller coaster. Even in the same day, you'll have highs and lows. And so you've got to be willing to wear lots of hats and be very aware of the challenges that you're going to face. And even when you get to your like highest moment, you think you've closed a great deal, then you got to be grounded enough that the next day it's going to come back and they're going to say, hey, we're pulling the plug and we're going in a different direction. So that deal's off the table, and you got to be able to pick yourself back up, dust yourself off, and figure out what's the right next step for you. In some cases, it's setting aside that idea and becoming a serial entrepreneur and starting another one. In other cases, it's trying something different. So I would say don't anticipate that it's going to be like maybe what your brain sees on TV, where you think someone just comes up with an idea and someone gives them a lot of money and then they make more money after that. That's not how it works. There's a process, and that's not it. So that would be the one thing I'd say is, like we've talked about before, try and get some folks to give you some mentorship and like help you through that discovery process of like, okay, this is how I take this idea and make it an investable business that can make millions or billions of dollars.
Yeah, actually, I echo everything that Mike just said. I think, it's one of those things where I think just everything that, Mike just said. And then also just what is it that gets you most excited about your life? And then you say, okay, if it gets me excited, I really want to do it, and I want to see this thing come to life in my world. Okay, then the question becomes, can I actually make a living from this? And if it's not, then you have to think about, is this now becoming a nonprofit? But if you're wanting to be for a creative for-profit business, leaning to what Mike was saying, you really have to think really hard about, where does this product fit and will people actually pay for it? But if you have a passion for something, and you really want to see it, come to realization in this world. And there's probably not a lot of money to be made behind it, but it really makes a difference. The difference that you should think about being a nonprofit. So you can be in tech and nonprofit as well as for profit too. Those are options for you as an entrepreneur. There's a lot of social ventures that are out here that are kind of under the 501c3 status. So that's something to think about. But definitely, it's got to be something that you really want to see come to life in this world, and you want to be part of making that happen. And that's going to keep you consistent in the highs and lows, because sometimes you'll experience lows for long periods of time. And sometimes your highs will be unexpectedly long as well, but you would definitely experience them both. But that passion and really wanting to see something happen is what keeps you consistent and wakes you up to go at it another day.
Yeah, I guess we could go on about this for a long time. I was thinking, man, I could talk about this for a very long time, but there's definitely tons of passion. It is a journey. And those successes that seem like overnight are not really overnight successes. And those that get those big checks, it's not all that it seems to be. So I always encourage people to read behind, or even watching the I became a big fan of We Crash and all the WeWork videos, and the Super Pumped and Theranos, the Dropout, and all those fun things. It shows you kind of like what those big checks can do to a person, right? They were all perfectly sane people at one point with normal concerns. Or I should say, I would say maybe perfectly sane, but reasonable people. I actually knew Rebecca before they started WeWork and before she met Adam. And it was an interesting, she's a very interesting person, but she's definitely not, I think there's a lot of hyperbole around who she is because of the fantastical story about WeWork. It's the same about Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg is an interesting person. He's problematic on a lot of levels, but he's not as fantastical as people think he is. He's quite, he's a pretty normal dude, but he's around a lot of people with a lot of hyperbole. and a lot of people, and when people can make a lot of money off of your vision, a lot of things get very weird.
One thing I will say to that, Marie, is that run your own race. Don't compare yourself to anyone.
That's true.
And Mark Zuckerberg's, etc. Like, run your own race and focus on you is what I would
absolutely
say.
And also, be sure to make sure that when you do become successful, you have the right support network underneath you. You need a right support network underneath you when you're at the very beginning. You need the right support network with you when you're super ultra rich and famous. You need a support. So don't forget that all the lessons you learned at the beginning are the same at the end, right? It's just sort of more money, more problems. So don't think life gets easier when more money's around. It doesn't get easier. And don't think that, you can't make it when times are hard at the beginning. You can make it, right? And there's these balances and choices you have to make, right? But the thing is that, the more you can get towards your own vision and passion, I think the more freedom you can have. And that's an important value way beyond money is your freedom. So, be able to do that. So parting words, what parting words do you have for everybody about this whole tech business? We've covered a lot of different things and topics. What would you say to the person who's like, okay, what do I do now? I've heard some things. What do I do now?
I would say, what is it that you're most interested about in technology? Once you figure that out, then find someone that is equally excited about that kind of technology as you, that's maybe more advanced in career or have more access than you do. To your point, Marie, find several of them because they may be busy. And then lastly, do you want this to eventually become maybe a business for yourself or a nonprofit that helps others? Think about those three things is what I would say. And then never, ever stop. never give up, because a lot of times those lows that we described are really just a way for you to build more character, build more strength, or build more confidence that you are the person for that specific job. So the lows are actually times where you really can learn a lot more about yourself, so that when you come up to the high, that you're handling yourself more appropriately and you're doing things at a more level-headed sense.
Mike, Kim, what say you?
Sure. So I guess I'll go next. Again, because I'm a software engineer by trade, I'm always looking for problems. And I look at those as opportunities, right? It's an opportunity to apply my skill set to see if I can come up with an innovative solution or help someone work through that problem. So I'd say if there's anything actionable, I would say, kind of like Tammy, I would say sometimes you won't know what you really enjoy, so just start trying things. Right? There's a great opportunity for a lot of people, especially here in the US with like community colleges, take classes at community college. Like I took a bunch of classes when I was like on my 10-year journey to get my degree, because I wanted to really figure out like, okay, I tried that. That's not it. This seems interesting. I'll try that for a little while. Okay, that's not it. And don't be afraid of that. It's okay to not be absolutely certain what your destiny is right now, because most of us are going to change and have several careers over time. And so the one thing that I've seen pretty much consistently from all of my interactions with employers, one of the ways that I think I'm most successful in helping people bridge that gap is helping them to recognize that employers are looking for the best athlete, not position players. They're looking for someone that has the attributes that are going to allow them to be successful inside of their particular environment. But those are they're easy to transition from one employer to another. If you are good at communicating, you're good at problem solving, you're good at collaborating with other people, then you can take all of those transferable skills and transition them and just add a little thing on top that's, sustainability. And now I can be an architect for garbage, right? And but that's just the cherry on top. What they're really hiring you for is they know that you can just own it and present them with a solution to the problems that they have.
Yeah, I think really quick, mine is don't be afraid to fail or make a mistake. I think those are also opportunities to really get to know yourself, get to know where you can improve, and potentially, it could be an opportunity for you to have, that amazing business idea that, oh, okay, here's a problem that most people face, and here's a great opportunity for you to really put your efforts in, and don't let your curiosity don't lose your curiosity. I think curiosity, passion, and don't be afraid of failure are all top things I constantly think about.
That's awesome. Okay. And one closing tip. Okay. My two favorite books that I like to recommend to people, actually three. I have three favorite books. One is called Great Failures of the Extremely Successful. It's the best book ever. If you're feeling flat on your face, depleted, someone told me about that book when I was in the worst position ever. So Great Failures of Extremely Successful, Asking You Will Succeed, 1,001 Questions to Change Your Life. That's a great one. And the third one for me is Hope is Not a Strategy, which is a great entrepreneur book because it's a sales book and it makes you really understand about sales. Yes, I can send the book recommendations out too. What books do you guys recommend? Do you guys have any favorites?
I read a book, Whatever It Takes, by Brandon Bornancin, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. It's about how you can create habits in order to transform working with people in your relationships, life, and it can definitely apply to you being an entrepreneur or student. It's a way to master these type of life habits that's going to be consistent in your life for you to apply to find success more often than failure.
That's awesome.
I am looking at podcasts because I do have a few podcasts, if I can find it, that I really liked listening to. I love listening to Entrepreneurs on Fire. Secrets of Wealthy Women, How to Money, Express to Impress. I also think the book How to Win Friends and Influence People it sounds intimidating. It sounds like something you don't want to read, but honestly, it really teaches you on like how to communicate with other people. And then there's a book called Why Didn't Anybody Tell Me This Shit Before by Allison Gale. So I have the book on the side, so I was trying to read it, but it kind of captures a lot of like female founders and their experiences. So I pretty much love those podcasted books.
Okay, top three. This is hard because there's so many good reads for people, and you should constantly be reading. If there's one thing I can tell an entrepreneur, it's like, and if you don't really like reading, like I'm not a huge reading fan, but I do a lot of cycling, and so I get a lot of audiobooks and just listen to the audiobooks while I'm cycling. That counts. That's my reading, right? So, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. That's classic. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I like that one. And then I would say if you can get a hold of, I don't know what the book is called, but it's the Growth Mindset book by, her name is on the tip of my tongue. I can't think of it right now, but
Brene Brown?
Yes, Carol Dweck.
Carol Dweck, okay.
Yep. Growth Mindset, because that's going to help you kind of get aligned with this is how you need to approach like the painful parts.
That's very good. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for this lovely session and all those great words. And I'm excited to share this with everyone. And if you all have any other thoughts or questions for speakers, I'll post their LinkedIn's on any post that you see. And we'll also do these replays in various chunks. So feel free to check it out on your platform of your choice and be able to reach out to the speakers on social.